Okay, call this regular meeting of Grand Forks City Council to order, January the 14th. First item is the agenda. There's been no changes. Can I have a motion to adopt? Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Smith, all those in favor. And we have 3 sets of minutes. They're all from December 17th. Motion to adopt the special meeting minutes, 17th of December. Councillor Smith, Councillor Wirischagin, all those in favor. December 17th regular meeting minutes, motion to adopt. Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Smith, all those in favor. December 17th primary committee meeting minutes, motion to adopt and recommendations contained herein. Councillor Smith, Councillor O'Doherty, all those in favor. And that brings us down to the first delegation, and I leave it to our Manager of Environmental and Building Construction Services. It is the Carbon Neutral Kootenays project that we have in our gallery, Patricia Donnell, and we have on speakerphone Dale Littlejohn. And so I'll turn it over to Patricia
and Dale
and Wayne.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, thank you.
Is that the speakerphone?
Maybe one of these mics.
Well, good evening, Mayor Taylor and councillors. My name. Remember to turn the mic. Oh, turn it off.
Technical problem.
Technical difficulties. Okay.
Yeah, I can't really hear anything.
No one's speaking yet.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. Hello, Dale. I think
Maybe the rest of you can turn your mics off.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yours is on. Brian's was missing.
Okay, we'll try again. Good evening, everyone. My name's Patricia Donnell.
That might be yours.
Joining me is my my colleague and boss, Dale Littlejohn, the project manager for Carbon Neutral Kootenays, and he's in Vancouver, being very carbon neutral and not joining us in the room. But I'm glad to be here. So this evening we're going to talk about the Carbon Neutral Kootenay project and more directly an offset offer we have out there for Grand Forks to consider being carbon neutral for the year 2012. So just to give you a little background on emissions and carbon neutrality, there are two sections to do with this. There's the community and local government corporate operations. Within your community, we're talking about buildings, on-road transportation, and solid waste. That's in your community, and that's things, if you've seen things like CEEIs, your community energy and emission inventories, and your official community plans, that's the community portion of being carbon neutral. We're actually this evening talking about local government and your corporate operations, and we're talking about your actual corporations. There's 4 sections. Your fleet, your general buildings, your recreation facilities, and your infrastructure. The little pie chart on the right there, it actually refers to Grand Forks, and you'll see for the year 2010, there was 10,310 gigajoules of energy that Grand Forks used in the corporation, and it's divided into those 3 sections. You have a 0 on recreation because it's the regional district that's accounting for your recreations losses. Sorry, a nice wordy slide here, but this is the nutshell of tonight's presentation. the overview. Grand Forks signed what's known as the Climate Action Charter. That was in 2007, and by signing that, you're committing to be carbon neutral in operations by 2012. Okay. Grand Forks has undertaken numerous initiatives to save energy and emissions in operations, including participating in the Carbon Neutral Kootenay project. And to meet this commitment, Grand Forks must take remaining responsibility for the emissions. And how you do that is purchasing offsets if you are going to be carbon neutral. Grand Forks now has the opportunity through the Carbon Neutral Kootenay project to do a bulk purchase of offsets generated by the Darkwoods project at a reduced price along with the regional districts, and at this point it's 17 municipalities within the region that have chosen to go this offset route. The cost to Grand Forks is expected to be less than $8,000 for the purchase of offsets for 2012. We'll talk about that a little later. And we'll be further, this whole offset project will be publicly, lots of publicity in the spring, and our recommendation this evening is to proceed with purchasing the joint procurement offer. A little bit again about the Common Commitment Collaborative Response. Again, the Climate Action Charter was threefold by signing, which was signed by the City of Grand Forks. You agreed to take responsibility for three things: being carbon neutral in respect to your operations by 2012. Again, operations, we talked about being fleet, infrastructure, buildings, and recreation. The other two parts of the current Climate Action Charter are measuring your community's GHG emission profile, greenhouse gas emissions, and creating complete, compact, more energy efficient rural and urban communities. So Carbon Neutral Kootenay is addressing Section I of the Climate Action Charter. Our mantra we've developed to be measure, act, lead. You have measured. You've been measuring your local government emissions since 2008, and Wayne tells me you're right on track measuring. You've done 2011, so that's great. You've been acting to reduce these emissions as much as possible. I know I know some of the sample things that Grand Forks has been doing. You've done a wastewater treatment energy assessment. That's one that pops out on the top of my head, but I know that you've been working really diligently to reduce your emissions. The last step in this Measure, Act, Lead is to lead and take responsibility for your remaining emissions by investing in projects that reduce emissions equivalent to your remaining emissions by 2012, causing reductions elsewhere. This just gives a little background of Carbon Neutral Kootenay scope. This is the region of the province that we are working with. It's the 3 Kootenay regional districts plus the Columbia Basin Trust, so it includes Revelstoke, Golden, and Valemont. Altogether, the assets, 388 buildings, 995 vehicles in our region that belonging to the corporations. It's 20,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, and $11 million is spent collaboratively annually on energy. The Carbon Neutral Kootenay project was to support the member communities in reaching common carbon neutral objectives and to save energy, emission, and money in your operations. The small towns get the same amount as the larger cities by working together. It's a sort of a shared energy management team approach. We're very proud of the project. We've had lots of provincial recognition, including Climate and Energy Action Award in 2011. 2009 at Project Startup, UBCM provided a prize for leadership and innovation. And just this year, one of your sister municipalities, Nacasp, won an award for their corporate operation reduction in energy, and they're proud. This is Grand Forks. This is kind of just what the snapshot of 2010, because that's the last year that the Carbon Neutral Kootenays measured your emissions for you, and after that you've been on your own diligently doing that. So energy, 10,000 gigajoules, green, which relates to 323 tons of carbon emissions, and you're spending $200,000 in money, energy. At the bottom there, it's the estimated cost of offset in 2012 based on this 2010 picture. So for Grand Forks, it would be $8,000 to purchase offsets based on 323 tons at $25 a ton. You get, and then CARA grants. That's a rebate program from the province, and it's based on your consumption, and it generally ends up being the same amount of money. It's the tax paid on carbon. So that's also $8,600 estimated. So you'd be getting a grant to cover the offsets. Now this is a little diagram again, just to describe offsets a little bit. Your corporate sphere, and as I described, you've got your corporate sphere and your community sphere. In this example, say your corporate sphere, your corporation is emitting 1,000 tons of greenhouse gas a year. You do all the things you can by fuel switching and being more efficient and driving less and whatever you can, and you've been able to reduce your emissions by half, for example, in this case. So that leaves, you still have half that you haven't been able to reduce. So these offsets, what they do is they go towards helping some other project reduce emissions. And so there it is. So 500 tons of your corporate emission minus the 500 tons in offsets, that's the formula to call yourself carbon neutral. Okay. This is just a little slide about why offset, responsibility at a reasonable cost. It's some of the actions. So now we've said you've reduced your emissions as much as possible. You're still going to have to purchase offsets to be carbon neutral. Some of the things you can do, and it's all a balancing act, or sort of looking at costs. So for example, one action, you can buy a more efficient vehicle, both at a similar price. You're saving yourself 1.2 tons per year, and then so for that particular action, your price is $16,000 per ton. Another example is reducing a boiler with a more efficient model, and doing the math there, the cost was $80,000. You're saving, some money, and that works out to be $250 per ton. This direct purchase offset that we're suggesting, overall, there's 20,000 tons in the Kootenays. We'd be purchasing offset, say at a cost of $300,000, and that works out to be about $15 a ton. And then the fourth example is East Kootenay Energy Diet that we have a proposal out to. That's it's budgeted to be $440,000 to help the communities, people in the community reduce their own emissions, and it factors out to be about $31 a ton. Now this is the part of the presentation that I was actually going to have Dale speak to. I don't know, Wayne, if you want to get him back on the phone, or I can carry on.
Hi, Dale. We're at that part of the presentation where you're going to be doing a little bit of speaking, so I'll put you on speakerphone. Okay. Have we got you? Okay.
So, hi Dale. So we're up to why offset together, and just talking, well, they're looking at the slide separately versus a project together.
I'm sorry, Chris. I can't hear you.
You can't hear me. Okay, we're at why offset together.
Why offset together?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us here today. I'll go through the last few slides. The slide that you should see up there right now, why offset together, provides a bit of an overview as to some of the rationale for what we're recommending. We could have each individual local government invest their offset dollars to meet their carbon neutral requirement individually. Really, for many local governments, that's not a particularly effective option, because there's really only so much you can do with $1,000 or $2,000 aside from write somebody a check. However, if we pool all the funds together and invest collectively in projects in the region, then there's a much greater chance of actually being able to make something happen. And it also provides a pool, if we're able to continue this on an ongoing basis, for local governments to access when they have an interesting project, such as organics diversion or other significant projects in the community. So a couple of pieces to that. On the next slide, we have offset options, and there's basically three ways that we're looking at to meet the carbon neutral commitments. The first, you could purchase offsets from Pacific Carbon Trust. Nobody really seems to want to do that. There's a strong interest in ensuring that the investments that are made by Kootenay local government stay in the Kootenays. The second option is investing for just 2012 only, so just 1 year, to meet the carbon neutral requirement to invest in the Darkwoods project, which is a forest conservation project between Nelson and Creston, which by its nature is sequestering carbon, so the trees are sucking in carbon because they're still standing, because they've been preserved by Nature Conservancy Canada. And we know that Pacific Carbon Trust has bought these offsets before, so they've passed a very high level of scrutiny, and they are in the region and they are ready to go right now. The last one, which we're quite excited about longer term, is creating local reduction projects within the region. So as I mentioned, things like organics diversion, building retrofits, in community, in residential and commercial buildings. There's also a possibility around avoided deforestation. So if you have land within the community that's zoned for development, but has an intact forest on it, and you're able to work with the folks who own the land to ensure that some of that forest is maintained, then there might be an option for some of that kind of stuff as well. So what we're suggesting is for the first year, invest in the Dark Woods project, and then beyond that, we'll be issuing a number of documents over the next few weeks, encouraging local governments to come forward with things that they think might be projects over the next few years, and the Carbon Neutral Kootenays project can help you determine whether or not those are good candidates. On the following slide, some examples of local offset projects. So these are the kinds of things that we'll be looking for over the next a few weeks and months as we start thinking about what next after this year. One example that's interesting as well is St. Mary's Band just outside the Cranbrook Airport is putting in some biomass district heat in their community, and there might be an option to acquire some of the environmental benefits and carbon avoided emissions from that as well. So there's a variety of things that we're looking at, and we'll be wanting to hear from all local governments as to what they think their community can do and what other local governments in the region can invest in their community. On the next slide, this is just a little bit more about the Darkwoods Offset Project. We are continuing to go through some due diligence on that, and that should be done over the next 3 weeks or so. But this is a visual of where the project is. And as I mentioned, the dollars stay in the Kootenays. There's some co-benefits of ecosystem preservation, and we are recommending this just for this 1 year. And that's all that I have. I guess back to you, Trish, for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Dale. So, yes, thank you. That's our presentation for this evening, and we're happy to answer any questions, either myself or Dale, if you'd like.
Thank you, Dale.
Council? Questions? Councillor Smith.
So if we had bought our offsets, or if we bought offsets from the Pacific Carbon Trust, what would they be per ton?
So they're $25 a
Oh.
ton, and that's firm. We are going to negotiate directly from Nature Conservatory for the Darkwoods, and we will be able to get it at a lower price.
Than $25.
Yes. We're asking you to budget $25, but we're working at getting it lower.
What's the likelihood of that happening?
It's pretty likelihood. Do you have any comment on that, Dale?
He's off.
Oh, Dale's gone. Okay, it's just me. Yeah, we, in fact, the slide, that one of the options, we were even looking at $15,
So I noticed that municipalities are not eligible for projects, right? You want it outside of municipal government. How does it work with the RDKB gas recovery or the Central Okanagan gas recovery? Are they going to contract that to outside businesses? They're not going to do it themselves?
So how it works is it's something that the project is something that you wouldn't normally be doing. Is very rough description of what it is. So if it's not in your normal realm of things. So if you're replacing a boiler in your city hall, that wouldn't be eligible. However, if you're replacing a boiler in a senior's home that doesn't belong to you, then that's more eligible because you're helping somebody else reduce emissions. So the example of how does the waste diversion at the RDCK or RDKB
Right.
work. Again, it's community waste, and I guess I'm not 100% clear on how it does work, but it's definitely has to do with being something over and above what they would normally be doing.
Councillor Smith.
So for instance, if, you know, we put in a methane gas recovery for the bio trash that's going into the landfill, that would be something qualified?
I would think so.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I'm not the expert on the offsets, that's why I needed my Dale on the line there, but I can certainly follow up on your question with you, because I'm not sure that I fully answered that one about how the organic diversion for the regional district. I can get more information on that for you.
Further questions, Council? Okay. Councillor Smith.
So I'd like to make a motion that we receive the presentation made by the Carbon Neutral Kootenay project team, and further that we approve that the City of Grand Forks carbon offset contribution for 2012 to go towards the Dark Woods project.
And the seconder for that motion, Councillor Wyers. Discussion? Question? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a motion to accept the report. Councillor
I
did.
did that.
That was a well combination? Okay, you got it covered. Thanks.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Patricia.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Our next delegation is the Boundary Regional Agricultural Society, and they're going to be talking to us this evening about what they're doing and the request for a council liaison. I have to say that I have agreed to be the liaison with the Ag Society at this point, so please accept my offer as a volunteer to be the connecting person with council.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, and my name's Sheila Doby. I'm representing the Agricultural Society and the Community Garden Project, which is what this presentation is all about. Our delegation letter has made 2 requests, and one of them was for a representative from the Council, which Mayor Taylor has so graciously accepted, and that's fantastic. And the other part of this request has been a letter of support for a community garden next phase of funding proposals. We're actually wanting to change that request into something a little more than a letter of support. We have been informed by the funder that we're applying for that in fact we are needing to apply for this funding as a charitable organization, which we are not. And so we are wanting to know if the City of Grand Forks would be interested in being the representative for this funding proposal and co-sponsor that project with us. This is a project for the community garden, which is resting on some of your graciously donated land. And I believe that this would be a very appropriate form of partnership and continuation of our work together. The grant is requesting funds to improve and expand upon the garden's physical infrastructure. And this will include the construction of a composting toilet, a bog toilet, in fact. They're innovative constructions where you actually plant willows around the pit so that it rarely, if never, is needing to be emptied because of the fact that it's very low volume anyway. It's not a high use area. And it's been approved. It's a design that has been approved. A part of the funding project is also an outdoor gazebo classroom, a new tool shed, and an educational signage, as well as development of a garden-based educational programming that includes adult food gardening, workshop series, volunteer program, and workshop tours for school groups. So this is basically the components of the funding proposal, and it is to the Evergreen Green Grant Walmart Canada program for green grants. So this is basically the structure of where we're proposing, and we need to have an organization with charitable status to apply for these funds. So this grant relationship actually does involve a formal contract which clearly defines our roles and our responsibilities together as 2 organizations working together on this. We will do our share and more of the administration and the reporting and the accountability work that's necessary to complete the requirements of this grant if we are rewarded it. And what will be required of the city is that they will control the funds coming from the grant, and that these funds will be in their own account within the city. I have a full description of what this contract needs to be here with me today. I'm happy to work with the staff, any of the city staff, to move this forward and assist it in whatever way we can. We have delegated a person within our organization who's working on this grant. She's fully equipped and prepared to do this work with city staff. Our application date for deadline is March 1st. So we do have some time, but it is timely that we do move forward as quickly as possible. And I think that's about it, and I'm willing to take some questions.
At this point, I think that what we're looking for from council is that we accept the report and your request.
Yes.
We're not in a position, I think, at this point to approve it.
Okay.
I think we need to send it back to our CAO
That.
for reasonable review.
Mm-hmm.
We will have a couple of meetings coming. Well, we have quite a few meetings coming up, January and February. I'm sure that we can meet the deadline once Mr. Allen has had an opportunity to review it. So I'll open up for questions from council. Council? No?
Move the report.
Okay, move the acceptance of the report and that we pass this on for investigation to our city staff.
Okay, and I will be
Councillor
in.
O'Doherty is going to make the motion, and a second by Councillor Krog.
Great.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Okay, very good. So I will be in touch with city staff and get some kind of dialogue going.
Yeah, I'd just like to compliment you on pushing the agricultural envelope forward. This is, I think, going to be an important aspect of our community in future, and I really wish all the support possible to the Ag Society. So
Great.
good
Great.
work out there.
Great, and please stay tuned. We will be presenting you with a food charter next.
Thank you, Sheila. Okay, council, that concludes our delegations, and we move on to the next item, which is reports from councillors. And I would start with the volunteer of Councillor Smith or Councillor Wirischagin. Councillor Wishagin's name's first.
I'm actually going to have a little bit of a report here.
Go for it.
Just to surprise you a little bit here. Just a couple things. First off, I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year, as well as my daughter a very happy second birthday, just a few days back. I attended the Harlem Crowns game this past Thursday at the high school. It was a grad fundraiser, and they did an unbelievable job, well organized, and good people running it. I had the best seat in the house as the coach of the boys team that took on the Harlem Crowns. Always worth the money. There's a Rotary fundraiser on the 25th, I believe, squash tasting fundraiser. I'm not too sure. 26th did it. I'm not 100% sure what the tickets are like, if they still have any left. Councillor Wyers will probably have a better
$30 a piece, and they can be purchased upstairs.
$30 a piece purchased at Sears, perfect. I'll be there. And in terms of local sports, there's a basketball Grand Forks Senior Boys team plays on the 8th and 9th of February, as well as the KIJHL season. Border Bruins are coming down to the stretch here. They only have 3 more home games on the year, so if you want to go and catch one, as I say, there are only 3 more games at home running to mid-February. If you want to know a schedule, check out kijhl.ca. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Councillor O'Doherty.
Yes, Your Worship, I attended the Christmas dinner at the Gospel Church on Christmas Day. There was over 300 people that came to the dinner. And I wish everybody a happy Christmas and New Year's on behalf of the mayor, members of the council, and the staff. And I also, Your Worship, visit the people of the Laundry Lodge, RDKB Lodge, and the seniors during the Christmas season.
Thank you.
That was my report, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Doherty. And thank you for going to that Christmas meeting. I understand that you had some inspirational words.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Wyers.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Deb Billwiller from the Boundary Food Bank, who received the Queen's Jubilee Award at the end of December at a presentation at the food bank that His Worship and I both attended. So our congratulations to Deb for her volunteer contributions to the Food Bank Society in our region for a great number of years. On January the 2nd, I attended the Boundary Economic Development Committee monthly meeting. They've moved their meetings now from Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, to the first Monday of the month. There has been a rotation in the chairs. Our former chair was Mayor Brian Taylor. The new chair is Marguerite Watwold, and the new vice chair is Councillor Barry Knoll from the City of Greenwood. Those meetings will extend into the future as notified through the regional district website. There was indication that changes will be coming forward, looking towards more of an economic development component in cooperation with the tourism commitments that they do have on the table for 2013. And of course their budget was established for 2013 as well. The next meeting will be Monday, February the 4th at 9:30 a.m. at the Regional District Office. So on January the 10th, I attended the Regional District Kootenay Boundary invitation to hear the new regional emergency plan that's has been released and dated November 2012. And that is going to follow with the emergency preparedness requirements for the City of Grand Forks, as well as the region, coordinated through Trail. Correct, Your Worship?
Yes.
You're right on top.
It's regional.
It's a regional. It's a regional collaboration. Yes, that's what we want to hear. Boundary Restorative Justice Program. I attended their meeting on January the 10th. And a delegation including Richard Tarnoff, the coordinator, and Staff Sergeant Jim Harrison will be coming before the City Council on January the 28th to seek the city's support in a good neighbor policy for community service opportunities. So we look forward to that presentation. As well, they did provide a 2012 review of the Boundary Restorative Justice program activities for the year, and I'm going to pass that on to this city staff to include in the next package for agendas, along with their minutes for that last meeting. So good work in the community. They have applied for a $10,000 grant to seek an opportunity to have some funding available to pay a resource person at the table because of the volume of files that we're receiving from the RCMP and the depth of the work that goes into each file, working with the circle and the offender and the victims. So they've made an application, and that information is available in the review that I'll provide. I do want to mention that the Grand Forks Environment Committee bi-monthly meeting will be this Thursday at 11 o'clock. It is an open meeting, and we welcome everyone to attend. As part of the function of the Grand Forks Environment Committee, we do bring forward recommendations to Council, and one of those recommendations I'd like to bring forward at this time, and that is the air quality solar car kit project that we do with the schools, the elementary schools, both Hutton and Purley. And what we have asked is that an allocation of $1,000 from our 2012 budget be allocated to purchase the 50 kits that are required for the continuance of the education component of alternate energy sources of heating for our youth in our community to understand that there are alternatives. And we did run the solar car program with the elementary students for 2 years. Paul Pernard is in the audience this evening, and in the gallery this evening, and he's been quite active. The total cost to the Sun Wind Solar company would be a grand total of $890.40 from our 2012 budget. That is still reflecting a balance of just over $13,000 left in it from 2012. So I'm bringing that resolution forward at this time.
And looking for a seconder on
Yes.
that. Councillor O'Doherty, further discussion? I think it's been a really worthwhile program. I've seen it operated a few times.
And we do, they do take it, you know, it is involved in Clean Air Day in June at a location. Plus, we usually have a race at the Fall Fair.
Yep.
Rain or shine?
Rain or shine. And the Woodworkers Guild has built the track. We do have a portable track.
Okay. Councillor Wirischagin? Oh, Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only situation there is we'll have to identify this as a 2013 expenditure. The balance can be carried forward into 2013, but we'll have to identify it as a 2013 expenditure.
Yes. Okay, you
Thank you.
understand that.
Yes.
So we're talking about 2013 budget.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're ready for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Further?
Okay, and finally, the BC Air Quality website at bcairquality.ca today is indicating that the Grand Forks average over the 24-hour period is approaching the 25 level, which is getting close to an advisory. If we do go over the threshold, it's going to be interesting to see how MOE responds to this, because currently they do not have a meteorologist on staff with the retirement of Paul Willis. So just to let you know that there is a possible, keep alert, listen to the radio stations. They are the first ones. There is a line of protocol for advising communities of air quality advisories, and by all means you can go to the BC Air Quality website to follow up on your community and just click on, it's not quite that visible, just click on the province picture that you see there, and your community will come up, and you just keep digging for it. Okay, and that's my report for this evening.
So I understand too that the wood stove smoke is an issue, and that there's been a reduction in support to the wood stove program.
There has been a reduction, and actually at this coming meeting, John Veer, who heads up the wood stove program with the regional district, is going to be giving us an updated budget on his project. As well, just so that you're aware, we do have an nephelometer subcommittee that goes out voluntarily monitoring the air with a portable nephelometer that has been lent to us from the University of Victoria. Mr. Pinard is going to be going out this evening as well, because of the advisory that we're bordering on at this time. So, yeah. So there's an opportunity to hear more information at this coming Thursday's meeting.
And the regional district has been supportive of continuing the wood stove program, kicking in money at various levels, mostly grant and aid money, but certainly we're under the same expectation at this point that we look at extending that wood stove as much as possible, the wood stove program. Okay, thank you very much, Councillor.
You're welcome.
Councillor Krog.
Yeah, just a quick one, just an update, I guess, from Gallery 2. The wine tasting was a successful fundraiser for them. And as Councillor Wirischagin mentioned, on the 26th is the Rotary Scotch tasting, and then they've scheduled I guess it'll be the second annual Masquerade Ball for, I believe it's February the 23rd. And that's it. Be there and wear something.
Hide your faith.
Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Your Worship. On December 18th, I was attended the Deer Committee meeting, and people are starting to get along a little better there as we try to work out some solutions to our community's problems. And we also established 2 subcommittees, one being the sign committee, so that's looking at improved signage to make people more aware of deer crossings and no feeding and that sort of thing that tend to be problems. And then also an expert committee that will look at providing the committee, the larger committee, with science-based solutions and strategies for managing our deer population. On the 20th, I attended Gary Onion's retirement, so it was sad to see him go, but you know, everyone certainly enjoyed burgers and whatnot that they had over there. It's good. On on the 3rd of January, Story and Company, who is undertaking our branding exercise, returned to us with kind of, now we're getting close to the end. So they had a really nice package for us, and I'm really confident that the community is going to find that they can embrace this this branding. It is really reflective of our community. We think they did a bang-up job, and we'll be unrolling that in the very near future. On the 2nd, of course, along with Councillor Wyers and Your Worship, I attended the BEDC, and then on the 10th, the Emergency Preparedness Planning Session. As a part of the last Economic Development Advisory Committee meeting, it was resolved by the committee members to recommend to Council to support the idea of a $650 contribution from the EDAC's budget towards a World Host program open to city staff, community businesses, and staff, in order to build sort of an ambassador program to put on a better face of our community to those that come through it. And so I'd like to make that motion.
Again, it's the same proviso that it be next year's budget that we're talking about with budget figures that you're using. But yeah, there is a rollover amount from economic development, so you're assuming that the money would be there for the coming year. And the question is $650.
And it's actually it's a matching fund, so we're just matching
right
up to that amount for each individual. The cost is expected to be about $65. It may be cheaper. So the idea was that the person would put in half the money, and then we would match it, and that way it kind of spreads it out, and it makes it a little more, you know, attractive to people who are interested in participating.
And a seconder for that motion, Councillor Wyers. Discussion. Councillor Wyers.
Well, I highly support that. I was a facilitator for 12 years here in the community for the World Host Fundamentals Workshop, so kudos to the Economic Development Advisory Committee.
Excellent. Ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Yeah, that's my report.
And that's your report. I'm going to stick to one topic tonight, which is committee work. The council has talked and are planning to implement a new structure for primary committee meetings starting in probably March would be the beginning of it. We'll be talking more about it in public in the next while, but I think what we're seeing is that there's limited opportunity for committees, committee chairs and committee work to be discussed in an open forum. And so the model that we're looking at here is that we would meet on a morning, probably the same day that we're meeting on Monday, and that we would start around 9 o'clock and run till noon. It's been suggested that we informalize it, that we, if we had a big table, we would have people sit at it, but we don't. So we'll try and make it as comfortable as possible for participation in the primary committee discussions with the people who turn up in council. And so it'll be an open invitation, it'll be publicized in advance, but it will be an opportunity for committees like Environment and EDAC and Deer Committee and any other committee that we're working on to really have a more in-depth discussion about matters that they're dealing with, about budgets, about priorities, and it will involve more activation, more involvement with the community. So I'm looking forward to this, and I think we have all of council on board with this at this point. We'll give it a try for a while and see if that improves our ability to connect with the community. So look forward to that in March. And that's my report, and I would accept a motion to accept council reports. Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Wirischagin, all those in favor? And I have no report from the regional district, although I will take questions if anyone has any regional district questions. Hearing none, I won't make a motion to accept my non-report. And we'll move on. The first item under recommendations for a decision from staff is the Manager of Technical Services development permit by Omega Restaurant. This is a request for a 420-foot freestanding pergola, is that how it's spelled? Pergola. And it would be outside, with outside seating on the existing slab on the west side of the restaurant building. So we're this is recommended that we approve this. It looks like it's going to add an amenity to that side of town that might be very attractive. Councillor O'Doherty makes the motion. Councillor Wyers, discussion. Councillor Smith.
Oh, no, I thought you were first.
No, again, I'm really glad to see this kind of initiative by a restaurant to humanize the business. So, ready for the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item of business is the policy for council in terms of memberships, conferences, and various other considerations that council and staff members would be wanting to take part in, educational opportunities, conferences, memberships. Can I open it up for discussion? And I'll entertain a motion when you're ready to accept this new policy. Discussion? There was just one little item I noticed that I wanted to bring up, which was if we're sending, it says sending 2 or more people, and at one point it looks like there's sort of an obligation if we're going to Victoria that 2 councillors go. I was just wondering, is there freedom within that we're not able to send 2 people, or it's more appropriate to send 1? It looked like that was restricting us to only sending 2 people rather than 1 if we needed to.
Mr. Mayor, that the intent of the policy is not to restrict council, it's simply to just provide the guidance to them. So if there was the ability to only send 1, then 1 would be for council to determine.
Yeah, it looked like, great that we would tighten it up and make it clearer what kinds of things, what kinds of organizations we would belong to and where it would be appropriate to send staff. So a motion to adopt this policy. Councillor Smith, Councillor Wirischagin. Further discussion? All those in favor? And thank you very much for a timely delivery of that new policy to council. And that brings us to information items. First, we make a motion that we accept all of the recommendations as per Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Smith. Going down through the list, National Health and Fitness Day in June.
First Saturday.
Receive for information. Hopefully there'll be some community take up on this in terms of some kind of an event that would celebrate this. It doesn't look like there's any money attached to it. That's the only thing we're looking at. Receive for information. And we have a payment under our Community Works Fund transfer. It is gas tax money, but it's not the gas tax what we're waiting for the water meters. Receive for information. Receive for information, the comments from Mr. Ronigan the other day. I thought it was certainly a good idea that we formally accept and deal with these comments that were brought up, and so receive for information in the minutes. Mr. Ronigan, thank you for that. The Royal Canadian Legion is looking for their usual quarter page, unless someone wants to go to a bigger ad in the recognition book. We've been doing a quarter page ongoing, and I would receive a motion to continue that. Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Smith. This is to continue with our history of funding that. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. AKBLG, request for presentations and the deadline dates. Memo from AKBLG, the second call for resolutions. So the first one there at number 10E is for us to do presentations of something we're doing well in our community, so we might give that some thought. That Councillor Wyers.
Your Worship, can I make a comment here, because I am the executive
Yes,
director?
please. Yeah.
And I just came back from the meeting in Cranbrook with the board. And what they're ideally looking for, because the theme this year is build. So they're looking for regional collaborative projects that we've undertaken within our region here, whether it be with Grand Forks, Christina Lake, that we can bring forward as ideas for this. So if we have a guest speaker or some a specific coordinator in our region who undertook a project of this nature, they'd like to hear from them as a possible. It's all about, we're working strongly towards regional collaboration, peace in the region. So, and the theme is build. So it's all about building relationships, building, into the future, our infrastructure issues that we're going to have, where we can work together, shared services, shared professional services, ideas of this nature.
It's a real opportunity to showcase your own community.
It is,
so if
yeah.
we can think of something, we can develop it. Thank you. The next item is minutes from the Environment Committee, received for information. The Economic Development Advisory Committee, received for information. And the final is a list of tasks done and in progress. That's the list. Councillor Wirischagin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a quick comment slash question in regards to, in this specific case, the Economic Development Advisory Committee minutes. I was approached by a resident in regards to the minutes, and while it seems like the expenditure of $650 that was dealt with here this evening was done in accordance to the way as I see it should be done. The individual had concern over previous expenditures, if there have been, how they've been dealt with, whether or not they have come to council. So the concern that they raised is, how much authority does this or any other committee within council have to spend taxpayers' dollars that weren't elected by the taxpayers? In other words, how much autonomy does each group have in spending money, taxpayers' money, when they haven't been elected to, we sitting at this table have been elected to spend taxpayers' money, and their concern is, after seeing that $650, while it has been disposed of, as far as I'm concerned, properly here this evening, that's what caught their attention, and do these, they don't mind these committees buying donuts and coffee. They just are concerned that there's the possibility of these committees spending above and beyond that they haven't been elected to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a sensitivity that we have discussed and that we're tightening up on. I think the rules have been there, and we've been following them in 99% of the cases. There's some minor expenditures, but I think we've pretty much brought everything from the major committees forward to council for approval. And we will do so in the future as well. So to answer your question, the unelected people have very little authority to spend money. And yeah, donuts and coffee, $20 here or there is not what we're talking about. But any major initiatives by committees will come forward for approval by council.
Just to follow that up then, is it possible to get a total breakdown of expenditures by each committee attached to the minutes for next time?
It will be after this fact. I mean, we're not going to do it now, but if you would like that in future. I mean, we're at year end now, so I think expenditures will be showing in our expenditure forms or expenditure that we're doing. Like, we're going to have a year-to-date on all of these committees.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm not being clear. All I'm asking for is just a spreadsheet breakdown of what's been allotted to the Environment Committee, what's been allotted to the Economic Development Committee, what's been spent, how much, when, and the year-end balances for the year 2012. It's been completed.
I think that's a reasonable request.
And just for it to be attached to the minutes in the information, just so the public has a chance to see what's been, to see if the 650 is the only time 650 has been spent, but been dealt with properly. I think they have the right to see these expenses.
I think that that's quite appropriate to ask for that, and we will report it.
And one last thing, and this is not a resident, it's just me. In regards to in the minutes there of the Economic Development Advisory Committee, it mentions an RFP for signs, and that they have been working on it. It's page 101, and the wording is that Councillor, I believe Kendall and yourself and
Teresa,
thank you, will be working on it. Is that something? And in my own opinion, I believe it's something that should be worked on maybe at that group, then approved by council before it goes out.
Absolutely.
It reads as if it would be approved by your committee, then goes out, then it comes back for the bidding process.
No.
Your worship, that's not the plan.
That's not the
Mr.
plan.
Allen.
Okay, then that's just...
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the Economic Development Committee would, well, I know the recommendation is, we talked about this a month with council, is to say, to bring that forward to staff to make sure that we've vetted it, to make sure that it's within our legal obligations, and then have that recommendation come forward to council through EDAC, and then EDAC can make that recommendation to council to approve that, and then council would have that assurance that staff had reviewed it. The work that EDAC would do for that would basically talk about the gist of it and provide the bones to what they're thinking, and then we would make sure that we're providing we're within our legal authorities and our purchasing policy, because we do have a new purchasing policy, and the city of Grand Forks, all expenditures would fall under those purchasing policy guidelines. So I think as council moves forward into 2013 with the new policy, there'll be a little bit of training, and we'll talk about how that works, but I think that we're moving in the right direction on that stuff. So.
All right, thank you.
All right, that answers everything. That's excellent. Thank you.
Okay, and we didn't make the motion, but this is to accept as recommended. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And I have no regional district report, like I said, and so I would ask if there's any questions on the regional district. No. Okay. Back to the agenda, please.
Bylaws.
We're on bylaws.
Yep.
We finished the Omega restaurant permit.
Yep.
Finished the membership and conferences.
Three bylaws.
Where are we? Please.
Use the little note things on the side. I'll shoot you straight through it.
The which?
On your side, there's a thing that shows notes or a scroll. If you hit that, then I'll give you all the titles, and you can just click.
No, I'm back there. My usual confusion at this stage in the...
Or look behind you.
You're on page 104, your worship.
Look behind you. There it is.
Yeah, look behind me. Thank you.
It's up on the screen.
I'm trying to get back here.
You're too far.
Here
You're
we
going the
go.
wrong way.
No, but I'm just going back to the minute.
In a hurry.
Or to the agenda.
If you go-
I know, but here's where I am. This is what I work from.
Oh, that's what you work from.
Yeah. That's not
Thank you.
working.
Okay, bylaws.
All right. We're at bylaws. And bylaw number 1943, the Revenue Anticipation Bylaw. And this is final reading. We've given it first, second, and third. This is our annual borrowing so that our cash flow can work.
I'll move.
Councillor O'Doherty.
Reading.
Councillor Wyers. This is for final reading of bylaw number 1943. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next item is the Electrical Utility Regulation Amendment Bylaw. This is going to be first, second, and third reading, and I think that we may have some comment on this from Mr. Love. This is bylaw 1944. We're going to receive it for first, second, and third. Alex, you're on.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor and Council. I thought you've got the request for decision in front of you, but I thought maybe I could just touch on some of the key points in there as to provide some of their wider context. And firstly, in terms of wholesale power purchase costs, we're seeing a rate increase of 5.8% from FortisBC this year, and that's composed of two parts. One is their general rate increase, which is applied to all their rates, and also this is the final year of rate rebalancing, which arose out of the cost of service study about 3 years ago. So the net effect is we see 5.8% on our power purchase costs. And because of that rate rebalancing, the various customer classes of Fortis are seeing various rate increases, but probably most importantly for us is their residential customers are seeing a 6.6% change, and they also are in their final year of rate rebalancing. I thought that might be a good, or this would be a good time to mention that on that rate rebalancing, Grand Forks saw total of about 6.6% in rate rebalancing, which increased our rates over what they were a few years ago on top of general rate increases. But when that was first proposed by Fortis, we were looking at a 30% rate increase, so we did actually quite well in getting that down to 6.6%. Because the power purchase costs are about 3/4 of the costs of running the electric utility, any impact on power purchase cost is very significant in terms of the overall revenue projection for the utility, and hence needs to be transferred into our rates. So we looked at a few different options in terms of what we could do for residential and commercial rates, and I think as you're fully aware, we have a process of maintaining our residential rates at a minimum 98% of what Fortis would be, so hence right away we're looking at a 6.6% rate increase there. In terms of actual dollars, it works out to fractions of a cent per kilowatt hour, and on the average residential bill of $100 or so, it's about $6 and a little bit. Just for clarity, that's on a monthly basis, but actually we bill bi-monthly, so it's the last point there is, while we haven't got the 2013 budget for the electric utility adopted, we have definitely got it drafted, and like I say, because 3/4 of that budget is fixed, we know it in terms of that power purchase cost, we're able to forecast fairly accurately what the revenues and expenses for the utility will be. So with the rate changes that we're proposing on the residential and commercial there, that would maintain, I guess, what we'd call a gross revenue to the utility of about $1 million, meaning our rates would generate $1 million more than our power purchase costs. Of course, we still have to pay for staff, capital projects, transfer to the general fund, and so out of that, but that's comparable to what it has been over about the last 4 years. If there's any questions, I could try and address those.
Council. Councillor Wirischagin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just give me a second here, please. To do with the wording, like in the bylaw itself, if I can find it here, it's very. having the same problem you have here, Mr. Mayor, when it comes to the computer. Certified true and correct. There we go. No, it seems fairly clear when it comes to residential properties, residential rates increasing by 6.6%. And somewhere in here, and forgive me that I can't see it exactly in front of me, the word competitive comes up when speaking about commercial rates. It seems like one's very precise, while one's fairly vague in the words competitive. And further down in the document, I believe it's in your memo, it mentions that, it mentions FortisBC's rates memo. It says FortisBC residential rates are increasing by 6.6%, which is what we're going to pass on to the customers to remain at the 98% if I'm correct. It says FortisBC commercial rates are reducing by 4.7%, while we are increasing them by 4.2%, 4.5%. My question is why, if they are reducing, are we increasing? A 4.5 rate change for commercial is recommended, so it's competitive, but it seems like one's going down while we're charging more. And my question is how, I don't understand it, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I can try to address that. There's I guess at least two aspects to that we should talk about. So the first thing is actually it's very difficult to compare our commercial rates with Fortis commercial rates because we have different rate structure. And in most of Fortis has many commercial rates, not just one. And many of them have what's called demand charges, and that's pretty common for commercial rates. What is unique is that we do not have demand charges in our Grand Forks electric utility. So when attempting to compare the two rates, the first thing we would look at is energy charges, and we would see that the rates in Grand Forks for energy are higher than they are if the customer was a Fortis customer. But we don't have a demand charge where Fortis would have a demand charge on top of it. So if we had demand metering, we could do an analysis and crank out, what would this customer's bill be if he was with Fortis, or what would it be if he's with us. But because we don't have the demand metered, we can only estimate what that would be. Roughly, demand charges would be in the range of another 20% on top of the energy charge. So for that reason, it's fuzzy. We can't compare directly. It's just sort of a bit of a ballparking. And then the second part of the question, I think, was, well, if Fortis commercial is going down by 4.7 and we're going up by 4.5, why that difference? Well, the reason we arrived at 4.5 is because that's what our actual increase in costs are for operating the utility. Our power purchase costs are going up 5.8%, and that represents about 75% of the cost of running the utility, but other costs will also go up and sort of run it all out, and we're looking at about a 4.5% increase in operational costs. Hence, that's why we want 4.5% for commercial.
That answers your question?
It does, but I have a more
rebuttal?
No, well, no, it's
new question.
Yeah, a new question, unless somebody else wishes to speak.
Go ahead.
No? Okay. Further on in your memo, it mentions that you do not foresee a secondary rate increase in the calendar year 2013. In the past, you've said that you foresee these rate increases, and quite often you've been correct. The question I have is, well, two questions. The first question is our bylaw, does it state it has to be a minimum of 98% or a maximum of 98%?
I'm certain it's minimum, but
it is,
looking to staff here to...
I recall it as minimum. I can't see why it would be maximum.
I was trying to think back. It was the previous council, and the argument was that to keep ours less than Fortis, but if it was at a minimum, then we could go above Fortis. That's why I asked the question. I'm just trying to think back.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm certain it was a minimum, so we do have the latitude to go above Fortis, but by going to a minimum of 98%, it protected the revenue of the utility from getting behind.
Okay, well that was one of the questions. I guess it's just more of a curiosity thing. Well, it does make a difference, I suppose, but as there is no other forecasted increase in the utility, 6.6% which would obviously be put on the next billing cycle to cover that last 2 months. Am I correct?
That's
But
correct.
we're billing for power that's already been used, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Which I always seem to have a problem with. It's like changing the price of the food after you ordered it, right? It's a concern that I have. Is it not possible for us, in some way, shape, or form, to not spread out that increase at a lower percentage so the hit is not as drastic over the year? Do we have to do 6.6 now, or could we do 2.2, 2.2, and 2.2?
Well, we could do phased-in rate increases, but that would drive us to going to a larger rate increase by the end because, for example, if we went 2.2 this month, then we would be foregoing 4.4%, and we would have to make up that revenue later in the year.
Plus, if you recall, we made a decision which was hard made at the last council. It was to follow the rates. And so if there is an increase, we need to adjust our funding right away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I believe I was opposed to that as well as the previous electrical rate increase, and I quite honestly believe I will be again this time around.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further
Maybe-
questions, Council?
Is there?
Certainly.
It sort of touched on one thing that I'd just like to comment on, was the aspect of this is expected to be the only rate increase from Fortis in 2013. And the reason I put that in the memo is because in the past there have been multiple rate increases because Fortis would have their general rate increase around this time of year, and then there would be another flow-through rate increase in the spring from any rate changes from BC Hydro. Fortis has changed their business model, so they forecast in the BC Hydro rate increase, and whatever it is, and they'll true it up for next year, so it avoids these multiple changes every few months.
Thank you. Further questions, Council? Okay, we're ready to begin the first, second, and third reading. First reading.
I'll move the first reading, Your Worship.
This is bylaw number
Yep.
1944.
Yep.
First reading, Councillor O'Doherty, seconded by Councillor Wyers. All those in favor? Second reading,
Opposed?
Councillor Wirischagin
Record it, please.
votes against first reading. Second reading, can I have a motion for second reading? Councillor Smith, second Councillor Krog. All those in favor? Councillor Wirischagin is opposed. And third reading of bylaw 1944. Councillor Wyers, Councillor O'Doherty, all those in favor. Thank you. For third reading, Councillor Wirischagin is opposed. That's it. Thank you very much, Mr. Love.
Thank you for your time.
And I'm asking, do we need to accept Alex Love's report into minutes? Or is it already in the agenda?
It's already in the agenda, Mr. Mayor. I think it's the way that it is.
Adequately covered.
Yeah, adequately.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I'm just noting that on my document here, it says it's the first time 17th day of January, it's the 14th day.
What are you looking at?
Well, I'm looking
On
at the amended
actual
bylaw.
Oh, I see. A typo?
1714. It won't take us fast.
Is there any requirement to correct that error?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a type error, and we'll correct that and have it included into the final document. And when it comes to council for fourth reading, it will reflect the
For final reading?
the final date.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And we're on to the Manager of Environmental and Building Construction Services Report 1945 Residential Garbage Collection Rates and Regulations. Presentation for first, second, and third reading of the new rates for residential garbage collection. We have a motion to accept that. Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor O'Doherty. Discussion, Councillor Krog.
Yeah, we're looking at, this is an amendment. bylaw? Yeah.
This is an amendment bylaw.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not just, it's not the collection rates and regulation bylaw, it's an amendment to the, which allows some opting out.
Some opting out,
By Parkside Below.
And,
right.
yeah.
Councillor Wirischagin?
I believe our CAO has a comment.
Oh,
First.
sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The manager of environmental building services can highlight the reason for the bylaw coming forward for council. But there is a good reason for this. So if council wishes, he can address council on that.
Please,
Yes, thank you, Mayor Taylor.
Mr. Copan.
We received a situation where the Parkside Villa is a provincially funded low-income housing project. And when this bylaw was instituted and they enacted the bylaw for the green bin program, they were paying for the green bin as well as a large bin through Alpine, a contract that they were locked into for 5 years. The contract started in 2010 and won't expire until 2014 or 2050. So they requested a means of being able to not have to pay double garbage rates. And the only way we could see by doing that was by allowing this waiver of services in specific cases where they have proof of a contract that they are locked into. And then when that contract expires, they will then fall under this, under the garbage collection bylaw.
All right, thank you. Questions on that, Councillor Wirischagin?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Does this still leave the ability of a resident, a single resident, to opt out if they so choose?
No, the way the bylaw is set up, this is strictly for complexes.
Councillor Wirischagin, then Councillor Krog.
Well, my concern is simply this, is that in October, or September, maybe it was October, I don't believe our new CAO is in yet. We sat here with our former CAO, Ms. Birch over there, and I asked the question, when we implement this, is it possible for individuals, for whatever reasons, disabilities, old age, for various reasons, to be able to opt out of this if they so deem necessary, they so feel they can't keep up with this. Or, you know, and some people may just not want to do it. And that was 3 months ago, and at that time we said yes to those individuals. And I believe that this, our CAO Lynn Birch did say at that point that we could opt out.
You can opt out, but you still have to pay.
Of course, but now I'm being told that in 3 months that is now not possible.
Well, if I understand it correctly, you still can refuse to take the green bin, but you still pay for it.
The word mandatory is right in here. The new bylaw says mandatory recycling.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The intent of this bylaw is not for green bin services, it's for the garbage collection services. Now, the low-cost housing group, which is provincially funded, was entered into a contract prior to our garbage collection contract and bylaw being initiated. So basically, they are already enter into this contract. Our new bylaw came into effect, so essentially they'll be paying for double the garbage services. And as a matter of due course, we have to have a rationale in here for us to we want to include them into the program, but unfortunately they were already under a contract, and I don't think, speaking for what's happened in the past, it would be appropriate for us to ask them to exit their contract without incurring some other costs. Now, typically within a collection service area, you will have the ability to have residents, not necessarily residents opt out, because you have to have everybody paying into the program in order for you to deliver a program. If everybody wants to start opting out of parks and roads and these types of things, now we're going to be in a situation where we can't deliver services. And when you live in a city, you have to have total participation in order for this to work. This extenuating circumstance is one-off. It would have been nice to deal with this originally in the bylaw, but it wasn't addressed. And I think the only thing that we can do here is council's decision before council to say either they pay twice, or we allow them to opt out and then enter into the program once they've their contracts expired.
Right, so in the spirit of being fair, this also does not set a precedent in terms of the green bins or other garbage collection programs. Councillor Wirischagin.
Okay, just so I'm clear here, my concern is this. I'm not talking about dollars and cents. I feel that everybody, regardless of whether they use the service, if they're able to use it or not, should pay the same. My concern
Can I
is
ask,
that
you're just referring to the green bins in particular?
I'm speaking to this bylaw in general. I'm speaking to the woman who lives down the road who's unable to really get around her house, that has a hard enough time to put garbage in her garbage bag, let alone sort things out. Is she able to opt out and just put out garbage, or does she have to put out all three? Is she limited to only one bag of garbage every 2 weeks, even though she's unable to sort everything out? That is my concern. The demographics of Grand Forks are not the same as other communities. I think we should have the ability to allow people, whether they want to pay for the whole service, but have the ability for them to opt out of the green bins, of the composting, of the recycling. And if they just want to put out 2 bags of garbage every week, I think they should have that right.
They're under
But they'll pay the same. I'm not saying they
one
should pay
bag now, right?
One bag every 2 weeks.
So that would mean a major change to allow for 2 bags of garbage for special people.
I don't think it's too much to ask for if they want to put out 1 bag of garbage every week as opposed to 1 bag of garbage every 2 weeks. If they're unable to sort through the recycling, through their composting, and they're only really able to do one thing, I think they should be given that right.
Okay, thank you. Further comment, Councillor Krog?
Yeah, I did bring it up a while back that there was that one property, but there was other manufactured home parks and a few other places that actually had contracts, right? And that was my concern at that time, that they'll end up getting double billed. And at one point in our garbage contract, it didn't include those. We put it into the new one, but then there was the idea with people with existing contracts. And I think that's the key point, is that it says existing contracts, and once they run out, as opposed to in 2015, they enter another cheaper contract and then say, well, we're in a contract, so it's existing.
Well, I guess, you know, since this is a response to a request for fairness, I ask Mr. Kootenays, are there other examples that you're aware of? Does this cover the bases in terms of this particular dilemma?
At this time, this is the only one that we have.
Right.
And
if others come forward and fit the criteria, they would get the same recognition.
Yeah, the row houses, townhouses,
right.
Community park.
Does that satisfy your concern, Councillor Krog?
Yeah, and that's what I said. This change, this amendment does satisfy that original concern. That's the point I was making.
And so, are we ready to start the process of 3 readings on this matter? This is for an amendment. And can I have a motion for first reading of bylaw number 1945?
So moved.
Councillor Krog, Councillor O'Doherty, all those in favor? Second reading, Councillor Wirischagin. Or no, I'm sorry, Councillor Wirischagin, are you voting against it?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, sorry. So Councillor Wirischagin votes against it. Second reading, Councillor O'Doherty, Councillor Wyers, all those in favor? Councillor Wirischagin votes against it. And third reading, Councillor Krog, Councillor Smith, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Wirischagin votes against it. Thank you very much, Council. We have no late items, bringing us to questions from the floor and the media. So from the gallery and from the media, anyone wish to come forward with questions, comments? Mr. Ronigan, welcome.
Thank you. First question with regard to the Winnipeg Hotel. What is the state of its demolition? And I ask that question for a particular reason.
Okay, and I'm going to have to refer this one to Mr. Allen. Can you update us on the
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Winnipeg Hotel people were planning their demolition, from what I understand. They'd applied for a few things, and then some environmental, there were some challenges that they encountered, and now they're trying to work through those, and they, according to the development permit, they have 1 year to undertake their activities, but the season, basically, the seasonal situation was not favorable for them to work. So we anticipate some more information coming from them in the future, but we haven't had any official response in the last little while, and we're expecting for our manager of technical services to touch base with them and provide an update to council in what's going to be coming in the beginning of February is regular council or staff reports in the council agendas. So these types of things will be addressing these timelines, so council will have updates on all the specifics that are going on.
Great, thank you. Is that satisfying?
I'm asking that question for the reason that the fence that is there creates a hazard for anyone walking from the Overweighty side across.
Okay.
You have to walk in traffic.
Duly noted.
Well, you cross over, and then if you're going to go along the fence, or you have to cut across, or whatever, it creates a hazard. As far as I'm concerned, it's a safety hazard for pedestrians, not vehicles.
To speak in their defense, to some extent, they did have some break-ins to the property, and some fires were lit. There was some vandalism, and I think the fences were a security move by the company. But maybe we could question whether or not they created a safety problem in terms of traffic flow and pedestrians there.
Perhaps a solution is to post the other side, on the Overweighty side, the crosswalk is closed, or something to that effect. Anyway.
Okay, and
I
you
just
think
bring
that
that
might
to
be
your
a
attention.
remediation for it?
Pardon?
It might solve the problem or make it better? To close the crosswalk?
To close the crosswalk from the other side so that you can't cross or block the sidewalk somehow.
Okay.
It's
I would
particularly
ask that-
dangerous at this time of year.
Right.
Which leads me to a statement. May I recommend that the crosswalks at all the busy intersections receive extra attention.
For street cleaning.
Particularly if you go out today, and I walk around the city a lot. I park my car, and wherever I go, I walk. And there isn't an intersection that I come to that is really safe. A year ago, just a little later than this, I fell within the city. And I'm just recommending that perhaps more sand at the crosswalks. You don't need the sand down a cleared sidewalk necessarily.
But
although
on the
some of the
crosswalk.
merchants are really negligent in doing their share of clearing.
Yeah.
But as a safety for pedestrians in the downtown section,
Yeah.
I suggest that. My third question with regard to Pacific Carbon Trust. Do they guarantee that the offset payments from the city will be invested in the Darkwoods project?
No, we're investing directly, as far as I understand this, in the Darkwood project. We're not investing in Pacific Carbon Trust.
Right.
Pacific Carbon Trust was mentioned in that report.
They seem to hold some shares in that as well, but I don't believe that they're the principal in this matter. They're a participant.
I haven't done my research in the past few months on Pacific Carbon Trust and the whole carbon offsets and so forth, but it's my understanding that they were to invest the money that was paid from municipalities, hospitals, schools, etc., in industrial innovations. For example, in Canada, in the northeast corner, got a fair, I think $80,000 or something a couple of years ago to use an innovative way of drilling or sequestering carbon dioxide or whatever. And I understood that that's the way they operated.
So you're concerned about the fact they're investing in big business, basically?
Well, yes.
And not in small projects?
Municipalities, schools, public services are paying into industry.
And, you know, I can say that at the regional table, this issue was similar to what we're facing here. We would like to have more local projects, which we don't have now, but better to invest in Darkwood at this point than the larger Pacific Trust, which again, we have very little control over and does go primarily to big business.
Well, I'm not arguing that you shouldn't invest in Darkwoods. I think that's the way it should happen. I assume that's a forestry project of some sort, knowing its location and so
Yeah.
forth. But that hasn't been the case in past years
Duly noted.
but with Pacific Carbon Trust.
Councillor Wyers.
And just to note, Lloyd, this Darkwood project is only for 1 year, so it does give communities an opportunity, or the Kootenays, carbon neutral Kootenays, the opportunity to hear from communities for other prospective projects going into 2013. So it's only for 1 year that we're putting the money into the Darkwoods project.
Well, I would hope that that the council and maybe Carbon Neutral Kootenay can find other projects within the region, close to home, in forests, etc.
Yes.
Maybe I heard
I think
today.
that was the plan for 2013 and beyond.
Yeah.
For lack of any projects going on in the regions right now, this is the alternative. We're already halfway through January, so they have
Thank you,
to.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you.
Further comments? Sandy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Just want to ask Mrs. Wyers, if further to the comments before, if the Environment Committee is actually looking at potential projects for Grand Forks? Are you doing an analysis or looking at what possibilities?
We can. It is on the agenda for, well, this specific presentation is on the agenda for Thursday's meeting, so we will be discussing it, yeah.
Okay, I really hope that you do, because I think there are some really good opportunities, but it does need some research and some investment of time to figure it out.
Yeah. Thank you. Further? Right.
Happy New Year to you all. Hope you had a good vacation or whatever. Congratulations on your new door. It's Google.
Yes, it is. Very nice.
Very pretty. Saw it today. Yeah, I believe it does.
Yes, it does
Okay.
have a slot.
They even put one in a piece of plywood.
I saw that
so
one.
that was cool. Congratulations on your kid's birthday. Was she born here?
No, in particular, we were unable to have it yet.
Okay. Because the reason I ask is Lorraine's daughter just had a baby, so I guess there's another kid's going to call me granddad. And they had to go to Nelson. I mean, they had a choice of Trail or Nelson. I got to do the drive to Winnipeg and back at Christmas, and of course I had my camera off the front window and I recorded the whole thing. I came back and I got the Selma crested in because I love that in the wintertime. It's so dangerous. It's just great. And then I worked to the next one, the Paulson, and I'm thinking, well, I can send my daughter, who's got 2 kids of her own, and she's the same age as Christine, who never had to leave town to go to have her kid in a hospital, in a town that has a hospital. And I know that when I moved here in 2004, they delivered babies here. Somehow, since 2004, I have moved more rural than I was before. And I'm curious why that is. Like, I ask different people, I get different answers. So why don't they deliver babies here? I know that you can't do anything about it,
well,
really.
and it's been discussed at various levels, but primarily we can't attract and keep the adequate staff, in particular anesthesiologists.
Who's we in this case?
We being the community, right? We as a community, as a hospital.
Okay.
Interior Health is unable to provide the level of backup
On our behalf.
On our behalf, right? And I'm saying that, you know, I have some sympathy at this point to Interior Health in terms of what's possible and what's not. And if you look at what it would take to put in obstetrics in this hospital, it's a really big bill. And again, you know, I went through it with my own daughter, so I understand the frustration, but I don't think there's an easy fix, and it's a big dollar.
So I hear different things from different people, you know, no
Right.
obstetrics or no anesthesiologist or
Councillor
no
Wirischagin
functional
wishes
or.
to comment.
Yeah, I do. Only because for that very same reason we had to go to Penticton, and I was actually born in this hospital, and the reason I was given by the doctors and the nurses here was simply put is that the amount of schooling and upkeep for the professionals here was so extraordinarily expensive for them to be trained up all the time that it just didn't make financial sense. There wasn't enough children being born in this community for them to keep everybody trained up.
So
They said ultimately, you know, if you were to come in there, they would be able to do it. No
In an
problem.
emergency
Yeah, in an
situation.
emergency, but they're not going to pay for them to be trained up for a service that won't be used all that
Right,
often.
okay, so I'm curious, do they give the reason being that the cost of medicine has gotten to be much more expensive, or that we've in a sense fallen below a certain threshold of being able to pay, or being big enough? I'm just curious.
Councillor Wyers.
Well, also in that transition was the move from community boards running your hospital to the the regional authority structure.
Right.
I think they have, what, 11 in the province? Or 8? No, how many? 4?
Regional authorities.
Regional authorities, yeah.
That's kind of another way of hollowing things out. I mean, you remove a lot of the meat that used to be there and concentrate it somewhere else, and from their point of view, it's a big skeletal structure, and who cares if it's a little bit skinnier here than it used to be? Because I hear the people in Salmo, and Creston have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
They have to drive to Salmo Creston to get to Nelson or Trail. So that's a horror story.
And the professionals that were conducting those operations and deliveries in our community have retired. Dr. Stefalani, Dr. Walton, and their doctorates were completely genetic. They had a general practitioner, general surgeon degree. They don't have that any longer. They specialize now. That's
So,
the other
there you go, Les, and I think this is a good example of where our new format for meetings of the committee as a whole will allow for people to dialogue with their council. So I'm looking forward to the changes in March when we can open this up more and interact with our community. Councillor Smith, you had a comment.
Yeah, it's just when I was on the fire department, a few members and myself were actually trained in emergency childbirth, so if they came right down to it, we could probably help.
Well,
I don't want to do it all the time. But
you can help me. I'm going to try and make a protest music video about this to try and just basically point that out to people who. It's one thing to sit in your ivory tower somewhere in the structure of IHA and make decisions, but you take that drive in the middle of wintertime when it's snowing and it's cloud and it's nighttime and you have a pregnant woman beside you. Can you keep you cool? I mean, really, it's a completely different thing where the rubber hits the ice. Anyways, that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
maybe just a little more planning, you know, just on part of the parents to make sure all the kids are born in March.
We should have rules about when you can.
We need a bylaw.
All right, that's it. Thank you very much. Meeting to adjourn. Council.